Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Ask a former targeted individual anything. I was the victim of electronic torture and harassment starting July 2014. The main perpetrators were an organized crime syndicate comprised mostly of small-time thugs and bikers, but went higher up to drug manufacturers and ex-military contractors and cyber criminals. The backstory, trying not to give too much personal info. I was on the streets after my dad passed away in a major metropolitan city. I got caught up in a lot of the inner circle of gangs and street thugs. I myself was going to community college studying computer science. I've worked on computers all my life. Word gets around. I'm sure that I can do a lot on a computer that people would pay money for. Like steal info, wire money, that sort of thing. I don't know why I didn't do it to get off the streets, maybe because I wanted to make an honest living. So I woke up in my tent one day, June 22nd or whenever the summer solstice is. Walking to get a meal, a man who introduced himself as Richard accosted me on the sidewalk. He was holding a printer in his arms and we talked about my skills. I'm sure he was already looking for me, as I'll explain later. So he says his boss has a job for me and I agree to go to a hotel about 5 blocks down. There I'm introduced to a man who goes by Bam, obviously a higher up. A couple women were in the room shooting heroin. So he asks me about my skills, and before I know it, we leave for another hotel across town. There I happen to see a few people I actually know but don't associate with. Druggies and thugs. Then I met Tank, Fat Boy, Bandit, really huge gang members in this city. Bam agrees to buy another room where me and Richard stay, and I'm supposed to audit some networks and make them cash. I had my Linux distro on a bootable SD, and Richard provided his laptop, which was very obsolete and wouldn't boot it. So here I am, unable to do anything on that busted P3. So the next morning he does some fraud and scams at various places and we end up at another hotel. I get another laptop that was stolen by some dude from a library. At this point I'm questioning their true intentions with me, but stupidly I stayed. A night later, Bam shows up and he has what look like wireless speakers, hooks them up. Richard starts playing Berserk by Eminem. About 20 or 30 seconds in, the song just doesn't sound right at all. It starts distorting and changing. At this point, I'm thinking they're trying to brainwash me, but that's absurd. Well, understandably, things get a little fuzzy from here, but I'm hearing weird frequencies, almost like white-pink noise. And at the end of it, I sort of sit on the edge of the bed, and one says, "Let's see if it worked." Then one more "wee you be" out of the speakers, and I can sense from my eye movements and thoughts that something in my psyche has changed. That night, they take all my stuff, wallet, and on the morning, as soon as in a safe public area, I leave them. Shortly after, I develop tinnitus, ringing of the ears although no hearing loss, perceived in the brain. Now, I heard a little about V2K from the old conspiracy show with Jesse Ventura, and I began perceiving things like external voices with no apparent source. Never had a history of mental illness. And about a week or so later, I stopped hearing them, and only the ringing in the head, now permanent. I'm well studied in these subjects like voice-to-skull devices and isochronic delta brainwave manipulation, but I always could use more enlightenment on it. I've always wanted to take them down, but I haven't seen any of them since. Questions, thoughts, is crazy comments. Now I heard a little about voice-to-skull from the old conspiracy show with Jesse Ventura, and I began perceiving things like external voices with no apparent source. Never had a history of mental illness. And about a week or so later, I stopped hearing them and only the ringing in the head, now permanent.
If it was auditory brainwave manipulation, why didn't it affect them?
Good question. My best guess would be either the way the speakers were directed and pointing, or that they were already manipulated. Richard, who was in front of his laptop directing these sounds, was facing the opposite direction of the speakers in a corner. Bam was to his side, watching me.
Why do you think they did it to you? Guinea pig? Do you fit a certain profile aside from CPU skills? If you had to label what they did to you, what do you think their intentions were?
I've thought about that a lot. I knew a lot about the inner circle and the shot callers. Had a lot of information the police might have wanted. Also, people spread rumors about everyone. I kept my mouth shut. So I know I couldn't have been labeled a snitch. I really don't know what exactly they wanted from me apart from making them money. I didn't have many valuables. I didn't really answer your question, sorry. If I had to put a label on what they did, I would call it electronic harassment and gang stalking. A lot more events happened than just what I put down. All of downtown one night, all I could see were Sons of Silence members biking up and down the streets, sounding like a war zone. One biker comes up while I'm on the corner listening to a street band and tells one of the members, who I'm well acquainted with and all of the band were in the game at one point or another. Biker tells him I'm flagged and he's like, so?
Take your meds, OP.
I'm not prescribed any. I'm all in all a healthy, upbeat guy. No need. I've had therapy. But to be as honest as one can be when it concerns their state of mind, I believe I'm in optimal mental health. Psychology minor, by the way. I've had a cup of coffee before I go to sleep tonight to answer a few more questions, and then I'll be continuing in the morning if the thread is alive. My purpose here is just to share my experiences and give some knowledge. But if need be, call bullshit on something, it doesn't affect me. I don't know why this seems crazy to you. Again, I attest all of these events to be factual. Other than my testimony, I have the accounts of witnesses from around that time, and I'm sure there's a lot of video evidence of the perpetrators. I have a good memory of all the locations where we went. I was charged with stealing that stolen laptop, although I was later acquitted because they found the real thief on camera. I do have one question. If the case were still pending or otherwise, could I subpoena the perpetrators, or at least video footage of them? This was in 2014. If these criminals literally gave me brain damage, is there any litigation I could be entitled to?
Can you provide a tone generator for reverse capture of VoIP spoofing callers? I have been harassed for approximately 7 years with the latest number out of area caller ID spoofing. I want to take action against these callers and the harassment, but there is no agency that will support the retracing. Local, state, and federal failure to provide a route to track calls. The abuse hotline will not do anything to help.
Tone generator. For just making a sound of your choosing? I've used a freeware program called Audacity. You can create tones of your choice of frequency. I've simply used it for music editing.
Tone generator for crashing the call bot or making it freak out. I hate that voice caller stating to be Google calling to help you get your website updated and in front of millions of customers. There is absolutely nothing wrong with my website, and I know this scam. The scam is to get you to listen to the call because there is subliminal audio in the background that is an effective phone surveillance hacking method. Whoever this call is originating from, TCG partners, or their agents, are not ever going to quit calling me, so I need to mess them up somehow electronically.
I'm sorry. You'd have to ask someone else, I'm not sure. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of a tone generator messing with phone systems like that unless you're talking about whistling into a payphone and getting free long distance. I wish I knew how to help. I'm wishing you luck and perseverance to find whoever or whatever is harassing you and an end comes to it.
Schizophrenia, the thread.
I don't have schizophrenia, nor am I trying to feed anyone's illness. If you are struggling with mental illness, I urge you to talk with a trusted friend or family member about it. It helps. I'm simply giving my testimony about real events. I'm not going to lie about this. I'd have to be seriously delusional for all of this to be false, which I'm not. I'm very sane.
I am in agreement with Z. There is something of a foot here with the personal intellectual property of people with certain computer skill sets. I too have witnessed ambient voice phenomenon, and I too have been to a psychiatrist to get checked out. The shrink said I was fine and this was normal, that it was a function of electronic harassment. Everyone that is debunking this is either a CIA operative, a deep state empath, a federal agent, or the likes of some Illuminati spy. I know that there are people out there that will debunk these claims because both Snowden and Assange said there were actors online to keep the secrets out of the public eye. These deep state actors will go to any length to make you out to be a whack job.
A lot of what you're saying can be supported. I can't wholeheartedly agree with you because I have not witnessed it all. It's really interesting that a psychiatrist would tell you you're electronically harassed. Care to share more about your accounts? Please, no fake stories. I do believe you, though.
I have been electronically harassed since 2005. This stemmed from a small tech company that had a lot of ties to local law enforcement. After I went into business for myself, they claimed that I stole a lot of their customers, and that simply was not true. Their customers pursued me through numerous and relentless methods because the tech provider was not willing to complete the jobs that I initiated. The tech company would not honor the contracts that I initiated through their organization. I did work for those companies, and this got the president of that tech company upset enough to hire a private investigator and start a suit against me. I won the suit because of a technicality in the way that I required each of their customers to put into writing that they pursued me and not the other way around. Since then, I was electronically harassed. I was hacked on numerous occasions. I was tracked in various ways. I was followed to other states. I even had a law enforcement officer call me on my cell phone while I was on site working for another completely different client in a completely different state. I had every device hijacked that I ever owned, including routers, computers, consoles, cell phones, home electronics, and other devices. I went to college in 2008 and got an Associate of Arts degree for digital multimedia, and the school would not permit me to use their lab after one incident where the electronic harassment reached their servers. I was forced to bring my own device and bring my own ISP to school. I continued my research after getting my degree in electronic harassment efforts and discovered that there are numerous state actors that will harass you once you make the red light list. I found a full and complete document that existed for a short time online, now removed, that listed every method the state actors use to surveillance you in every conceivable manner. I have gotten good at identifying when and how these actors are engaging my devices, and now I have recognized the signs and symptoms.
I'm fascinated. But I have to believe, if you're hearing voices that aren't from a bone mic, you're hallucinating. Orders, sure. Secure channel. Okay. But junkie bikers don't seem like they would have the wherewithal. What you need to make it happen.
And I'm not going to disagree with any of that. However, again, this is organized crime, not just junkie bikers. I know of some Crips and gangster disciples also associating with these other gang members. Also, it's not hard to hire ex-government contractors when you have a lot of money. Devices to cause auditory hallucinations using them have existed for a while. You can buy it online quite easy. I know these were used against me. It was a hallucination simply because I perceived a physical stimuli with no apparent source. These devices are patented, and its effects have been studied ever since microwaves were discovered.
I finally tracked down the company responsible for the electronic harassment earlier this year. The company is a sponsor for landline and mobile telecommunications providers known as TCG Partners. I did everything that I knew how to do to prevent these deep state actors from contacting me, including file a lawsuit with 1500percall.com. Eventually, they ended up coming to my home and taking me to a lunch meeting under the guise that they were trying to recruit me to be a child abuse traffic investigator. These two people were from the Dallas, Texas FedEx office, and they attempted to use their cellular devices to hypnotize me, but it did not work. I knew everything ahead of time about how they conduct their investigations and how they use the Bluetooth device on their phones to get your mind position to be adapted to electronic engagement. They failed to hypnotize me, but they did succeed in hypnotizing the entire restaurant and everyone else inside the establishment. They use a method of identifying you with a tree of life type profile analysis. They can identify every trait you have with the interview and a short but latent list of questions that are designed to identify if you have what it takes to do the job they are trying to recruit you for. They use it with or without your permission to get a better than DNA visual representation of your persona. I have not seen any results from this because I combated them from the start by engaging the questions with non-answers in a best attempt to run them astray.
It's very admirable how much you peruse these perpetrators. Hopefully you can find evidence of criminal intent so justice will be done.
There is no method for justice in this particular case of harassment. I have contacted every conceivable form of law enforcement available, and every single one of them either puts me on a wild goose chase runaround or tells me that there is nothing they can do unless a crime is actually committed. There it goes with the high-frequency sound intrusion. I need an audio tone that will block these other than blasting them with words. There must be something that interferes with their electronic devices.
Oh, I also had one more thing to say, fellas. There's a Gwen Groundwave emergency network tower right above my apartment building on the roof. I've seen a couple of guys go up there and service it that don't have any company logo or uniform. It looks a lot like this one, maybe fatter. I'm thinking about going up there tomorrow and taking pics of it. Maybe we'll be able to discern what kind of purpose it has. I also think my tinnitus is worse in this area compared to other locations. Go figure. Yeah, definitely spoopy.
I live in Canada and have been gang-stalked by what I perceive to be people affiliated with the Ottawa police after being, without my asking, groomed by some sketchy guy, calling himself literally a British intel agent, secret squirrel. I did not ask for that guy to invite me. I told him to go fuck himself because I perceive Freemasonry to be a negative organization or essentially organized crime, and I wanted absolutely no part. This was in 2016. It was a deep state company, but I was just a contractor working on a technical help desk. I had no idea before being hired there what this company is. Accenture is a spy front full of Freemasons, it turns out. Since then, I had weird instances of strangers staring at me from different apartment units at my previous residence, and a string of events from random people, but mostly neighbors. One group of gang stalkers above me made my life hell for 9 months. And then when I managed to finally get that guy evicted, after a ton of work on my part, I got maybe 1 month of peace before a new set of 220. Something strangers once again moved in, now directly beside me, and they began once again torturing me. I won't go into the details to spare my own PTSD, frankly. Let it be known that when I moved provinces to flee this deranged harassment, criminal behavior, they goddamn followed me to the new place. New place is double the rent, and yet still these perpetrators have placed people below me. The area I live in is very francophone with very little immigrants, and what do you know? The gang stalkers at the new spot, in the condo below me now. I contacted the police here and they have been much better, thank God. But still their harassment persists via subtle and almost impossible to prove harassment methods, electronic harassment.
Stalking is a pattern of repeated unwanted attention, harassment, contact, or any other behavior directed at a specific person that causes the target to feel threatened, fearful, or unsafe. This behavior can take various forms, including following someone, sending unwanted messages or gifts, monitoring their activities, or using technology to track their movements. Stalking is not limited to physical proximity. It can also occur online, where individuals may be harassed through emails, social media, or other digital communication methods. The intent behind stalking is typically to intimidate, control, or instill fear in the victim. Stalking is considered a criminal offense in many jurisdictions, and laws have been implemented to address and punish such behavior. If you or someone you know is a victim of stalking, it is important to take the situation seriously and seek help from law enforcement or support organizations dedicated to assisting stalking victims.
The worst part is the unbelieving. They think it's your fault and that you got screwed up somehow along the way in your life. Schizophrenia, schizophrenia, schizophrenia. They say so callously and clean, as if they're 100% sure that my brain is the fault of this somehow, when I never did any drugs or drinked or even smoked, and I have no past history of mental illness in my family. It wears on me almost worse than the synthetic voices I get. They don't understand. They will never understand the struggle I go through every week when the voices act up. How strong I have to be. How resilient I became to the voices of psychological warfare. I suppose that's one good thing that came out of this, realizing I have the strength to persevere and be greater than what I suffer. And I did that all by myself. I survived 6 years of unimaginable pain, and I plan to continue to thrive in their faces. It may come all crashing someday by some random act of cruelty, or the voices might figure out a way to finally get me to do what they want with some new psychological manipulation I've never heard of before. I'm not delusional in thinking I could fight this forever, but I can damn well try my best.
They'll shout insults at you and do their little street theater non-stop, and the second I respond, or do something back to them, they'll go into victim mode. It's their sick game they're playing. They'll laugh at you nonstop and call you names. And when you finally tell them to fuck off, they call the cops, start calling you insane. Their end goal is to see you destroyed. If you're being targeted, you could find the cure for cancer, and these weirdos will still find something negative out of it. They've made up their minds the second they targeted you. You don't deserve to live in their minds.
A few years ago, I started to notice weird stuff happening. People talking about things I'd done or said whilst alone at home. While walking around town or going places, random people doing the same thing. When driving, I noticed cars following me, leaving a 5-car gap between me and them. This went on for a while, and I started to become paranoid and scared. I ended up feeling like it was the end and voluntarily sectioned myself. The people on the ward, who I'd never met before, knew things about me they couldn't possibly know. I heard them talking one night saying they were going to do something to me. I was only there for a week, but they made it really hard for me. The staff were in on it too. Things continued to happen ever since then. Street theater, people talking about stuff that they couldn't possibly know about me, stalking, and all the other gang stalking shit. I've been telling people for years about all these things. Told the police, doctors, family, and a lot of other people. Thing is, some of them are part of it, and the rest just say it is my mental health. Now, years later, I think some people are starting to believe me. Lots of things have happened to me over the last 5 years. Too much to post about and try to explain, although I have posted about a lot of it in previous threads over the last couple of years.
Lots goes on in the world that is very strange, and I noticed that lots of people seem to be in on something. They don't act like normal people. They act like they gave up on being human and are instead living some kind of program, following some kinds of commands.
It's bullshit psychologists telling normies what to think. Either they're indoctrinated in college orgies or swept up by the mental health clinic that drugs them into a suggestible stupor. Couple that with being peer pressured into using suggestogens like magic mushrooms while they're fed children's shows like Bluey, and you have yourself a brainwashed drone who's part of the herd.
It's COINTELPRO on steroids. It's mostly used on the anti-establishment population, or anyone such as whistleblowers, Terry Davis, that threatens government institutions. It's also used on relative nobody junkies, so that the water can be muddied, and those people can be associated with actual establishment threats. And they can all be lumped into one big take your meds schizo populace. It should actually be called something like neural monitoring, and not gang stalking, as the people utilizing this technology prefer the word gang stalking because the word is much less associative with government. I have been targeted for over 2 years, and there appears to be at least 2 stages. Firstly, you will not know technology is being used on you. They will use the mind control aspect, as well as the V2K, but not talk directly to you or let you know that your thoughts are being manipulated. From reading other people's testimonials, it seems like sometimes the V2K may not be used at all. For me, it was used for the purpose of making me think my upstairs neighbor and his girlfriend were talking about me as well as spying on me. This stage lasted for months and evolved into me believing different people were spying on me, including family members. I believe this stage is the social isolation attack designed to ruin friendships and estrange you from family, as well as to discredit you by getting you to check yourself into mental institutions. After a while, you realize something is wrong. You're not crazy. Your friend isn't living in your attic with a roof access hatch. And you start doing some Google searches and you realize advanced intelligence technology is being used on you. Then begins stage 2. Stage 2 is very strange, and I have never quite been able to figure it out. At the simplest terms, it seems to be an annoyance and break you down stage. But at the other end of the spectrum, there has been some positives out of the entire ordeal. You know it's real. They know you know it's real. And the V2K transforms to full-on synthetic telepathy. You no longer think your neighbor is talking or spying on you, so they will talk directly to you, and although you can talk back, the output is completely gibberish and almost AI-like. It's extremely repetitive. Occasionally they will tell you to shut up, and you end up bored and becoming engaged in some real mind game fuckery. Since you know it's real, they will really, and I mean really, let you know it's real. They'll start the dream manipulation, the body jerks, the eye twitching, full-blown 10-minute or longer segments where they'll play some AI thought plant movie in your head. Some of it is annoying, some of it is cool. My gangstalkers seem to be of the tamer variety, either that or I wasn't bad enough to warrant the full-blown torment and terror some people report. Stage 1 caused me to lose my job, and the gangstalking for a long time after that was get a new job. One of the most memorable experiences was being woken up by them in the middle of the night, and the V2K not being annoying and AI-like, but rather them using a normal voice and asking me and telling me to think about what I genuinely wanted to do for work. Once I got a job, they used the tech to help me get used to it in the form of pain, fatigue relief. All this sounds completely batshit crazy, and I wouldn't blame you for a second for not believing it. I honestly couldn't tell you if my gangstalking was to ruin me or help me, but even after getting off drugs and getting a decent job, it didn't stop.
Maybe glowies are testing on us?
I don't think they are testing anything. This tech has been around for 50 or so odd years, with patents proving it. They know what the tech can do. There's probably very little to experiment with. I think something, be it satellites or advancement in AI, have led them to be able to use it on a much broader scale. I think the real question is how exactly broad is this scale? Is it the entire population? From researching this stuff, it seems like when you're first targeted, they do it silently for a year or two in order to build a psychological profile on you in order to make it much more effective. And then the gangstalking begins. And once it begins, they've basically gathered intel on quite literally everything you've done your entire life. It's likely that this isn't the case, and more so that the entire population is hooked up to this shit as some sort of population control mechanism. And once you red flag enough, the gangstalking begins. That's not the interesting part either. Who the hell cares about a druggie thinking his or her neighbor is spying on him? Or what he does with that falsely planted narrative? The real question is, how are they using this stuff on a global and political scale, and who is using it? It's real. Whoever is using it can read your mind, influence your decision-making, and if they want to completely incapacitate you, whoever is utilizing this technology is quite literally running the show on a global scale. And what we see in the news, in politics, and reality itself is basically just theater. They can read your mind, know what you're doing, where you are. They know your entire life history and can read your email by decoding brainwaves as you're reading it. All of those things you describe are what gangstalkers make you believe during stage 1. You're being followed, your electronics are bugged, there's infrared cameras in your walls, etc. I believed all of those things, but none of those things turned out to be real, and I was only led to believe those things due to the mind control aspect. I think a lot of targeted individuals only ever get to experience stage 1, and they'll believe those things. as long as they live.
They are even good at making you believe they have a lot more power over you than they actually have in reality. I'm sure they can't predict everything yet. They wouldn't be getting mad at me.
They do have complete power over you. I read an LA gang member's testimony about his gang stalking, and it can be absolutely vicious. You probably aren't a violent person and aren't a threat to innocent people, so they aren't going to violently thrash you around or give you the crippling pain they are very able to induce. Their predictive powers are pretty amusing, though. No idea how it's done, but mine will occasionally use it often during when I'm watching TV. I always ask them about conspiracies like the moon landing, but they just pretend to get pissed off and never give me any straight answers. And even if they did, there wouldn't be any way to verify it.
The two key words are COINTELPRO and Zersetzung, East German Stasi. It's very real. The government hates you, probably because you know the truth and speak it fluently. We live in a totalitarian matrix where only the enlightened realize that we aren't free.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.